I call the Marlington Local School District Board of Education regular meeting to order on August 20th, 2020 at 7:01 p.m. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the
flag
of the United
States of
of America,
to the republic for which it
which
stands,
stands one nation,
nation under God,
with liberty.
indivisible, with
liberty
liberty
and justice
for all.
The reading of the mission statement will be by Dr. Mason. If you could turn your mic on, please.
Could someone else read it? I'm still putting my stuff together over here.
I'll volunteer.
Danielle, do you mind reading it?
Josh, you can go ahead if you'd like.
That's
Instead of
fine.
her. Go for it.
In collaboration with staff, community, parents, and students, the Marlington Local School District will develop lifelong learners who understand and apply knowledge and demonstrate excellence in pursuing the highest standards with effective intervention to challenge every student.
This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Dr. Main, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gaber,
Here?
Mr. Hagan,
Here.
Ms. Humphries,
Here.
Dr. Mason,
Here.
Mrs. Stevens.
Here.
Adoption of the meeting agenda. Are there any additions or corrections?
I have a couple simple additions under new business and policy. We have just a little bit more than the one policy that Mrs. Sutton and I will fill you in on that. And then I would like to give the board an update on Marlboro Elementary and where we are with construction and the exciting things that are going on there.
Are there any other additions or corrections? Is there a motion that the Marlington Local Board of Education adopt the following agenda for August 20th, 2020 meeting as corrected, adding additional policies under new business and an update on Marlboro construction?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Dr. Main, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gaber,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
5-0, approved.
Public participation. Were there any documents submitted for public participation?
There were none.
Special presentation, Business Advisory Council update by Dr. Mike.
Yes, good evening again, everybody. Just a quick word about the business advisory. So a few years back, the state passed a law that we were required, school districts were required to be a part of a business advisory council. So Marlington participates in the countywide council, which I think is an excellent idea. And the business advisory was set up to be more of a communication between businesses, local businesses, and school boards. And it's not only given us a chance to ask the businesses to be our partners and friends, but it's given us a chance on lots of occasions to show off the great things that we do. So I've had great relationships with business advisory. Lots of times the local chambers will be involved. Often smaller businesses will want to be involved. Right now, we don't have much of an update because the Business Advisory Council doesn't meet that often. And with the COVID situation, there hasn't been a ton going on. So I hopefully the next time we'll have more of an update with that.
Is there any discussion or questions for Dr. Mike? Old business, do we have any old business? New business, board policy, Dr. Truffler, Mrs. Sutton, if you would like to go over that area.
Sure. Mrs. Sutton, did you want to kick off the conversation?
Sure. So Ed Holland, our Neola rep, came to see us on Monday, and he met with Dr. Schreffler, myself, Mrs. Packey, Mrs. Gabrick, and Mr. Hagan, and we went over the updates that have been available to us. We had a spring update that we missed. And then we had a couple summer updates, and then the fall update, we will be ahead of the game. So those have been released to you via board docs. So if you should have received an email with a login and some information, so you can go in and review volume 38.2 and volume 39.1. Those should be available to you right now and or in the very near future. We will have the first reading on those in addition to the Title IX policy and OTES policy and graduation policy. We will have the first reading on that in the first meeting in September on the 3rd, and then we're hoping to have that wrapped up by the end of September, and that would totally get us back on track. So we just stepped off the track just a little bit, but we're totally back on track. And I just want to remind everyone that the graduation seals, although that policy was not adopted, I believe 99% sure we are still in compliance because you all adopted the program of studies that included the graduation seals in it. So we're not out of compliance there. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Sutton. That was a good synopsis, and most of the policies that need updated are just some simple things. I think 2 of them are one word. Policy changes come about, as you know, oftentimes when they pass new laws or revise laws for us. So as Mrs. Sutton said, we'll have that all in order. If anybody, I would encourage you to really go on to board docs, look at policy. It's a great tool. In the old days, we had to pull out a huge binder. They were never up to date. This way, it's a great way that right online you have board policy. So if you have any trouble at all, let us know, me, Mrs. Sutton, and if we need to, we'll connect you to IT support with Neola.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We wanted to also talk about, I know the board has been discussing public participation, and I provided to you, and Mrs. Sutton assisted with this, the actual template that Neola offers. So what the template is it takes the policy all the way back to just a template, and then you can fill in the blanks. I think the nuts and bolts you've discussed, but I know some of you wanted to discuss public participation a little more. So we put it back on the agenda. If you are ready for a first reading, we can do that. If not, we'll put it in next time with all of the other updates.
I think I'd recommend waiting till the next meeting, go over the template, everybody choose what options we're going to take. What happened was when we made the corrections to our existing policy, it made it confusing. And by rolling it back to the original state and selecting our different choices will make the policy clearer and easier to follow. Or if you want to go through the template now, we can do that and get this policy in place. It's up to the board.
I'm good with going through the template right now.
Okay. All right, so the first choice is then the section where in order to permit the fair and orderly expression of such comment, the board shall provide a period for public participation, and your choices are as noted on the template, if everybody has that in front of them.
Is that in our attachments?
It's yeah, it's attached to your agenda as well as it's in board docs. Your choices are at every regular meeting of the board, at all public meetings of the board, or at those public meetings of the board, which action may be taken. I think what we've been doing in the past is at every regular meeting of the board. What options is the rest of the board thinking about on this?
That sounds good to me.
I think regular meeting sounds good to me as well.
Karen, you're okay? Scott?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Yep.
I think that's an excellent choice. That's the way to go.
And then the next section, the presiding officer shall be guided by the following rules. Under A, public participation shall be permitted. Second choice is indicated on the order of business before the board takes official action on any issue of substance or at the discretion of the presiding officer. I believe our existing policy says public participation shall be permitted. But we can change to any of the 4 that are there.
I think that makes sense. I mean, we don't know what everyone wants to talk on, and if it's at a regular meeting, that sounds like it's appropriate.
The first one, public participation shall be permitted.
Yeah,
Is that what you're referring to, Karen?
yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, so A, that'll be the first one. B, is anyone having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of the meeting. I'm assuming we're gonna allow that anyone may participate.
Yes,
Makes sense.
that's a given. Yes.
I think that is the section where we tried to, that's where it got a little confusing, but we wanted to insert the verbiage that persons wishing to provide their comments in writing as an attachment to the minutes must provide their document to the treasurer at least, I'm suggesting 5 business days prior to the regular board meeting, rather than stating a day of the week in case our meeting would change to a different day. Did you want to stay with that if it's provided to the treasurer ahead of time, that it would be, it had to be submitted in writing, would be attached to the minutes?
That
We're
makes
good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so B, and then C, attendees must register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. We have been requiring that. Is everyone still good with that?
Yes.
D, participants must be recognized by the presiding officer, which we have been doing that. The rest of that will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and group affiliation if and when appropriate. I think it's good to, at a minimum, know their name. I don't know. How do you feel about the address and the group affiliation?
I don't know that we would need group affiliation. Often it's nice for boards to ask the address. You know,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be a resident. We may from time to time get a person that comes that's a community member but just has an interest in Marlington. Sometimes we have people that want to give students scholarships, etc. So I think name and address would suffice.
Name and address, but not group affiliation.
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
E, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to blank minutes duration unless extended by the presiding officer. And I think we had decided 3 is what we would accept on that. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. We okay with that?
What does that look like? You mean in one night, or like, how do you know?
At
that
one
kind of
board
thing?
meeting, So for example, they gave a 3-minute speech and then they decided they wanted to give a second speech. I think this says it's fair to make them wait till everyone else spoke on that topic before they would come up and do a second speech, I guess.
I mean, if that's what that means, then
I don't
that,
know.
that sounds appropriate, but I guess I don't quite understand what that means.
Dr.
If
Mike,
that-
do you have some insight on
Yeah.
that?
Yep, that means in the same meeting. So
Okay.
one person can't take up, 5 3-minute spots. You have to wait. Now, if they have something, they may carry over to another meeting. It might be the same topic, but that means the same meeting.
Should we
Should we
add
say
that?
that to make it clear?
I think you should. Yeah, that makes
Okay.
it very clear.
G, all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Are we good with that? Do we want it in or out?
The only thing I might suggest to you, you might want to consider saying all participants or all statements shall be directed to the board. Just a suggestion. I like the no person may address or question board members individually. You're a united board, but it's up to you on that piece.
I mean, they are addressing the full board. I'm fine with that if we want to make that the full board.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds good.
H, audio or video recordings are permitted. The person operating the recorder should contact the superintendent prior to the meeting to review possible placement of the equipment. Are we going to allow the participants to audio or video record?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the 1, 2, and 3, just no obstructions, no interviews, and etc. Okay, then I, the presiding officer may prohibit public comments that are frivolous, repetitive, and harassing, interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, abusive, off-topic, obscene, or irrelevant. Request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum or is disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. Request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. Call for a recess or adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. 6, waive the rules, and then with the approval of the board when necessary for the protection of privacy or the administration of the board's business. We good with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And then the last section, the portion of the meeting during which the participation of the board is invited shall be limited to, and we discussed 20 minutes, unless extended by a vote of the board.
I think that's a good amount of time.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not sure, Carol or Patty, did you take notes on that? So you've got the selections, or do you want me to go back through it again to make sure we're on the same page?
I did take notes on that. I have those.
Okay. Does anyone need me to read through the selections we chose on this? For an overview, or everyone has what the first reading is?
I'm good.
I'm good too.
Scott, Karen?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, so I recommend the motion to approve the first reading of policy 0169.1 as presented.
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? The only, I would just like to mention again that we do have a resolution for public participation at our virtual meetings, and that one, this does not replace the resolution. We have the resolution and we have this policy. Is there any further discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Ms. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Dr. Scheffler, do you want to continue on with the new business so you can give us an overview of each of the items?
Yes. So I have the motion, the annual motion there for the board to approve the bus routes as presented. And for our community members, just remind them that doesn't mean that our bus routes are set in stone today. That means our board is approving the routes as we get ready for school. And then the board grants the authority to the superintendent then to change routes as needed. And that does require a vote of the board.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the bus routes?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Dr. Mike,
Yes.
did you plan to share enrollment numbers somewhere else? Or-
I can share them here or at the end, whatever you'd like.
Okay. Well, what works for you?
How about if we do that at the end of the meeting?
Okay.
Dr. Mike, if you could just maybe comment on the bus routes. Are we socially distancing children on the bus, so we've got more routes? Or if you could just maybe comment on that a little bit.
We are socially distancing on the routes as suggested to us by the health department in the state. And right now, we do not need any additional routes or any additional drivers. And that's at this moment because some of our students will be at home online and some of our students will come to school, but we're expecting more parents to drive their students. So right now we're good. We don't need any extra drivers or extra routes as far as I know.
Are we going to look at doing something to try to avoid congestion with the addition of the parents dropping the kids off?
We're talking about that at each school as we meet with the administration, the best way to handle that. Where do we need an SRO? So yes.
Are there any additional questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Stark County Sheriff contract. Dr. Mike, if you'd like to make that recommendation.
Yes, so we will be continuing our contract with the Stark County Sheriff, George Meyer and his staff to provide us with 2 SROs. We will have the same SROs back to us. I've heard so many great things about these 2. We have a male and a female, and you have the contract there. So we are all set to have those 2 back.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation on the Stark County Sheriff contract recommended by the superintendent?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
and Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
The impact group contract, Dr. Mike, would you like to make that recommendation?
Yes, as you know, we use the impact group to help us with some of our public relations and to help us create many of the things that we put out to parents that require graphics, so on and so forth. They do an excellent job. They also have offered to help us with some other things to do, social media, things of that nature. I did put them on the agenda to renew because their cost increased a little bit. So that's, which is understandable. But since I'm new and their cost increased, I wanted to highlight that for you and get your approval. I highly recommend this group. They're experts. I've worked with them before. They came to our administrative retreat under this agreement, did a great interactive presentation. I just can't say enough about them. So as presented to you, I'd like you to approve their contract.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent for the contract between Marlington Local Schools and the impact group as presented in marked exhibit JJJ?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Dr. Mike, could you go over the cost of that? And I know you said that you had brought them in for your administrators meeting, and what else does that include, and or how many hours do we get of the various?
So they provide us with a contact person, and every building uses that person. They are the organization that helps us structure and publish our newsletters, our Marlington News. That's part of what they do. They work with school districts in school improvement. They have offered to do presentations for us that deal with anywhere you would want charts and graphs and those types of things. They help us if we ask them, would you help us with this statement that we're putting out? And they work with many schools in Northeast Ohio. So they help us tailor to Marlington what is best for us. For example, they helped us with the documents that we provided with you yesterday or today that will go out to talk about the restart of school. And, from the beginning to end, well, here's a guide for parents, here's a guide for staff, those types of things. They did increase their cost. It was slightly over $3,000 per month, and they did increase that to $4,000. They said we had been getting a break for quite a while, so that's the cost.
Do they do anything with social media and website presentations as far as on our website?
I've asked them if they can help us a little bit with that, or maybe steer us in the right direction on some of those things. I've never used them in the past for that. So I've got to get used to what they can do for us in that realm. But there's never been a time when we haven't reached out to them and they haven't really quickly responded, even in this time when there's a lot going out.
And do we know, are we locked into a number of hours with them, or how is it structured as far as their contract?
I don't recall that we're locked into a certain number of hours. I think it's more, we will help you complete these items for your district.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussion?
I was just going to say, I think we need to try to push more with them for some of these options that I see that they have under their core services, under strategic advancement, communications campaigns. They've got recruiting efforts, student achievement, diversity and equity, social emotional health and wellness, operations, safety and security and personnel, as well as social media. I think we could use their help on that as well, since we're already in for it. And I talked to Dr. Mike about this as well. We should probably try to get as much as we can since we're paying for the service. I'm sure they don't mind us not using the full capacity of their service and paying monthly premium, but I'd like to get the maximum we can from them.
I totally agree, and we will do that.
Any additional discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Ms. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay, under letter E, I have some in lieu of approvals. So payments in lieu of transporting students via bus. And we have 3 students under there to approve this evening.
Is there a motion to recommend the superintendent's recommendation on the motion to approve transportation requests as presented in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3327.01 for the 2021 school year? And as he said, there's 3 students listed.
I
So
so
moved.
move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Dr. Main, I had asked you earlier on the cost per student, if you would give us an update on that.
Thank you. The reimbursement rate is $250 for a student in lieu of transportation, the same as it's been for a few years that at that same rate.
Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay, letter F, you have in your documents a memorandum of understanding that would be with our teacher union. And most of you, all of you will remember when our schools were ordered to close in the spring, everybody kind of scrambled. Now, what happens to our coaches who started the season? What happens to the yearbook advisor who's done 3/4 of the year? So on and so forth. So I have there a memorandum. This is very common. I think almost every school district in the state is using some version of this, and we're trying to be proactive. So it talks about if you complete X number of your season, then you get a third of the pay or quarter of the pay, whatever it states there. It's a little bit different for coaches than for supplementals that go all year. Then if you complete the next part and we don't get ordered to shut down, you get the next pay. And then if you complete more toward the completion, then you get the final payment. So I think it's a better distribution, and it gives people kind of the peace of mind that, the work that I did, I'll be paid for. And then if we get shut down and we can't do any of the work, they understand we won't get paid for that.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Marlington Local School District Board of Education and the Marlington Education Association dated June 20th, 2020 as presented and marked Exhibit KKK?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion?
Now, this has yet to be approved by the Marlington Education Association.
Correct. So here's kind of the order of the way it goes. I had seen the memo, but then the union did bring it to me. We agreed on it, but before I can have them sign it, you have to approve it as a board. So after you approve, then they'll sign and I'll sign it as well. And then we'll put it into play.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're okay with using a June 20th date, even though it says we're entering into this?
It should not say June 20th. I'm not sure what's happening. I changed that twice. It should have today's date for the date, but then it
Mine-
goes.
Mine says August. The one
Okay,
I'm seeing says August.
We did replace it.
okay, mine did not update. So is it,
Okay.
do the minutes also stay August? Or the minutes stay, or the agenda, does it say August or does it say June? My
My-
copy says,
My agenda says June.
Yeah, the
Okay.
agenda says June.
so the agenda is June, but the memorandum attached, the
August.
corrected copy does say August
Oh, I
20th.
see. Yeah, I see what you mean. I did not change it on the agenda. I apologize. But your actual MOU should say August. It should say today's date, August.
Okay, mine has not updated, but that's okay.
Okay.
So,
We'll make sure the signed copy is correct.
okay. So the date will be August 20th, 2020.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gaber,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Okay, letter G is our remote learning plan. I'll just say a couple of words and then I'll let Mrs. Sutton add. We are required by law to present the state Ohio Department of Education with a remote learning plan that addresses what our plan is, if we would have to shut down, how we're servicing students, so on and so forth. How our document came about, we didn't do this in isolation. I talked with some other schools, Mrs. Sutton did as well. And you have the document that Mrs. Sutton then put into play. This has to be board approved and then it will be submitted to the state and then to our educational service center.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the remote learning plan for the 2021 school year for Marlington local schools as presented and marked Exhibit LLL?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mrs. Sutton, did you want to go over a few more things on this?
Sure, I can if you would like. So basically our two options that we presented to our families were option one, return face-to-face, just like we would have any other year. And our second option was for students to enroll either by 9 weeks or semester, a 9-week commitment or a semester commitment to our Duke Digital Academy. Some of the outlines are compliance. We had to document some things according to the state, but basically it talks about both of those options. And then if we would have the need because of a stay-at-home order again, that the governor or another authority would close the schools down, how we would handle that instruction. We are still right now, testing is still a go in the state of Ohio, so we still have to offer our annual testing, both diagnostic, fall testing, our gifted testing, and then preparing for spring testing. So we have to plan for that. We also have to plan for our students with disabilities, and we also have to make sure that we're meeting attendance requirements. So all of that is listed in this document. Dr. Mike spoke about the collaboration among our colleagues, both in Stark County and beyond. Everybody shared plans. So I could not have done this without a lot of the collaboration that I had with both in the district and others outside of the district. But putting this plan together was most definitely an administrative and whole district venture. It absolutely took our community to put this together.
Is this going to change the amount of teachers in the buildings?
So how we're managing, yeah, because our, I know Dr. Mike's going to talk about enrollment in a little bit, But currently, on a normal year, we average, I shouldn't say currently, on a normal year, we average between 10 and 20 students in our Duke Digital Academy. Right now, that number is significantly larger. And so, yes, it will require some shifting of staff. The least disruptive way to do that is to use our title tutors. So we did get permission from our federal consultant, our federal programs consultant at ODE, to shift our title tutors in their capacity to help facilitate student learning through Duke Digital Academy. So those teachers will receive training, they will receive support, and we are very confident that this is temporary. Again, we are asking our elementary families to commit for 9 weeks. We're asking our middle school and high school families to commit for the semester. That's based on course requirements, credits that are earned at the high school level, just the general cycle of courses. And then we're really hoping at the semester we can bring on or bring back as many students as we can.
Okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, Carol, I have a question on section 3. the
Sure. I found a
requirements.
typo. I don't know if you did.
The second open bullet point in there, white bullet point, says students will be required to participate both in person and virtual work in order for full attendance to count. If we're remote, how do they participate in person?
So that's our remote learning option. So that's if that is not our Duke Digital Academy. That is not our face-to-face option. That's if we're shut down, stay at home. If we would have a situation where a student has to receive therapies or a student has to receive extended services beyond just a gen ed teacher, we would need that in person.
Okay. And then how does this apply to quarantine students? How will we handle a quarantine student?
Yeah, we're working through that requirement every day. We had a phone call today with the Stark County Health Department about that very same thing. Those will be managed according to the latest information we get from the Stark County Health Department and the CDC and the governor's office. So once we submit this plan, it's not etched in stone. It's obviously fluid based on what's happening as a result of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved, 5-0.
Dr. Mike, do you want to do the Marlboro update at this point of the agenda?
Sure. Let me grab my information. So this is Gabrick, and I thought it would be a good idea to give you a little bit of an update of what's happening at Marlboro. So I have been asking since I came on board, I've been asking Plug Smart to give me an update, kind of like, what have you done this week, and then what will you get done next week? We are definitely on, if not ahead of schedule. And some of the August highlights, there's some major work, as you know, going on the roof. So the roofing, that continues. The controls of the HVAC system. So all of that, how will it be controlled? All of those are being put into place. Any kind of electrical or mechanical that involves new equipment. So if we have something new that requires special equipment or special electricity to be run. The second floor had some need of ceiling repair. Those are some of the highlights. And then from right now, those were a little bit earlier. Most of those are ongoing. We are to the stage on the roof, if people know anything about roofs, to the sheet metal capping that will be going on the roof. The VRF lines being installed, making sure that our HVAC system is in place. And then I'm trying to see if there's anything new. I think those are probably the highlights from Plug Smart. And then, of course, what's happening, we had a lot of stuff at Marlboro that had been placed there, kind of storage. A lot of people took time to wade through that, take it off of our inventory if we didn't need it. I mean, we're talking things as like some VCRs and things that our kids probably wouldn't even know what they are. And we took them offline, off inventory. We offered them, it would have been wonderful to have an auction or a garage sale, but it just wasn't going to work. An auction was cost prohibitive. Most people don't want these items. So we let people come in and take things, get rid of them as long as they took them home. And what was left, or what is left, is in the process of being taken away. There's some painting being done that are touched up. Obviously, the normal summer waxing and scrubbing, those types of things. So pretty pleased with the project there. I know I've had a lot of experience building buildings, redoing buildings, and it looks like, oh my goodness, this is a big mess. And then it all comes together, because remember, we have experts doing this. So, and if there are a few things that when the kids come, a few little things that aren't done, we'll get them done. The kids will be happy to be back at school, and we'll get those things done. So, if any of you would like to walk through, would like a tour, I can arrange that. We can take care of that.
And Mike, I'd just like to point out too, just so people are aware, that our maintenance team has done an excellent job. We've gotten a list earlier in the year regarding requirements that needed to be met, as far as repairs needing to be made by the fire department and the health department. And we had actually gotten a quote from a local company to do a lot of those repairs. And I believe I'm correct, our maintenance guys took care of that, correct?
Correct.
So I'd like to thank them for doing that in a timely manner as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that also. It jogged a little bit of a memory. We do have a head cook in place for Marlboro. We actually transferred an employee there that wanted to go there. And there were a few details of the kitchen that we thought, the head cook should have a little bit of a say. Where should these things go? So I spoke with Al today, and we're working with the new head cook. And then we do have to have a final inspection then from the health department, and that's scheduled. So we're getting close.
And Dr. Mike, could you just confirm that we do have our IRN number in place for Marlboro Elementary and ready to go forward with that?
Correct, we do. We have our IRN number, and we're good to go.
And Patty, maybe if you don't mind, just reviewing the expenses now, the amount of Nexus money that we brought in for the calendar year, which would be the 2 payments, and then what we have expended so far from the capital projects fund, and what is the remaining balance that we owe.
Great. Well, we have receipted in from Nexus are $1,460,393.90. Our paid expenses to Plugmart up to date is $488,004.80. Our original contract was $1,314,962 with Plugmart. So we do have still a remaining balance for work that is going to be continued to do.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Patty, but just want to let you know, it's Plug Smart.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Wanted to let you know.
Thank you. I
No problem.
apologize for that.
I
They
have
would not be happy with me.
I have one more addition too. It's not pertaining to Marlboro, but if you'll recall, we needed some work done on our high school roof. And that's being completed as we speak. So we needed some scans there, and we want to do it right. We want to make sure it's done right. So we're taking care of that.
So is that repairs that we're doing or replacement?
It's well, I would call it falls under repairs, I would say.
Is there further discussion or questions on the Marlboro update project? Is there any other new business? Moving to the treasurer's agenda, Dr. Main.
Thank you. The first item under financial resolutions is to recommend the motion to approve the financial reports and overview of receipts and expenditures for the period ending July 31st, 2020, as presented and marked as exhibit MMM and exhibit NNN.
Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's recommendation for the financial reports and overview of receipts and expenditures?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
If I could just call your attention to the first report, which is MMM. On the last page, you will see in the second column, month-to-date receipts and month-to-date expenditures and the fund balance. Our receipts have been $4,678,622.31. And what I like to see, our expenditures are less. And then you will see our current balance. For NNN, if I could just call your attention to the very first check, which is Apple. Those are our iPads, which were paid from a elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund. That is our ESSER that you hear about. And then also on the last page, you'll just see that there is one to Plug Smart, not Plug Mart, Plug Smart.
Sorry.
I will have to apologize to them. This is not good relationships. Okay, so if there are any questions, please let me know.
I'm sure the bank takes the check even if you wrote Plug Mart on there.
Yeah.
They do. I don't think they'll let me write Plug Mart on there.
Patty, do you know where we are on the reimbursement for our buses that we're trading in from the buses that we had purchased this spring, and where we are with that process and the amount of money we'll be receiving on that?
I do not have exact fact, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers on those, but we are in communication with the ESC in just finalizing those spreadsheets and the documentation.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Approved, 5-0. The second one is to recommend that the motion to approve the July 2020 budget and revenue revision as presented and marked as exhibit 000. We have two of those. The first one is some upgrades to the playground, and you will see that in the next in the next resolution, there will be a donation from the PTO at Lexington. And the second one is from Cross Country. We did a budget and revenues account revision. They had an additional fundraiser that wasn't planned for in the original budget notes.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's recommendation for the July 2020 budget and revenue revision as presented in marked exhibit?
So moved.
Oh,
Second,
is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0. As I mentioned on the third, number 3, recommend the motion to approve the following donations for July 2020. As you see, the first one is Lexington PTO, and that refers back to the playground updates or upgrades that they have made at Lexington. The second one is Paulus Orthodontics, which is a $100 donation to Marlington High School.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's recommendation for the donations as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Is there any discussion?
I have a question for Mike. Given that they made a donation for the playground repairs, what are our limitations going to be as far as playground and equipment for the kids?
Right now, the health department is allowing us to open our playground equipment. They've given us guidelines for cleaning. So we're going to go with that. There may be a few things that we decide, in conjunction with the principal, we're not going to allow kids on that particular piece. But right now, we're good to go as it stands today.
Okay.
The board wishes to thank these donors for their generous donations.
Thank you.
Would you please call the roll?
Ms. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0. The next item is to recommend a motion to establish a Fund 510 called the Corona Relief Fund. These are funds in addition to the other previous ESSER funds, etc. This amount is $117,047.51. This is mainly for expenses such as PPE, deep cleaning, and there are other various things that we can spend these on.
Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's recommendation to establish Fund 510 for the CRF?
So moved.
Second,
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, and we're required to have this fund, aren't we, to receive certain funds?
I'm so sorry, could you repeat that?
I said, is the school district required to have this fund in place to receive certain aid from, the coronavirus relief bills and stuff like that?
This motion was just to. Oh, my back. This motion was,
Uh-oh.
it's just establishing the fund so that we can receipt money in and then expend the money back out. So
Yeah.
you're just establishing that fund and permission for us to bring in that money and pay the expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
Patty, do we know our anticipated costs for these expenses at this point? Do we have a budgeted amount that we're anticipating to spend on PPE and cleaning funds, cleaning supplies and funds like that?
We had several discussions as an administrative team, and Dr. Mike and Mrs. Sutton and I also, we gathered today and just looked at some of those various expenses. Dr. Mike, do you want to speak on this, or you want me to continue?
Sure. I don't know that we have exact numbers, but we're going back through because some of these funds are retroactive back to March. So anything that we can use in the categories, some of them are for technology, some are for cleaning products, some have a lot of leeway. There's one that we saw that came through today you can actually use for personnel, overtime, for custodians, extra substitutes that you might need, so on and so forth. So I don't have an exact number, but we will use the funds that we're given. We need them, and on the flip side of that, we will use them for sure.
And this particular fund will also help with that overtime or certain personnel, and that we discussed.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0. The next item is recommend the motion to approve purchase order 232894 after the fact as presented and marked exhibit PPP.
Is there a motion? Is there a
Sorry.
motion to approve the treasurer's recommendation to approve the purchase order after the fact as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Patty, could you give us just an overview of that?
Sure. This is, it's called a then and now certificate, and it's just stating that the funds were present then, but we are certifying it now after the fact. In other words, this is something we do every summer, or it's been done annually in the past. And with our processes, the current environment, working in different situations because of the coronavirus, it was just the purchase order was maybe overlooked or missed, and we're just going back and putting it in place for our audit and saying, yes, we did definitely have the funds to do this.
And then, as we're coming up on the new school year, it's probably a good time to remind everyone to submit their purchase orders timely and put the requests in appropriately. I think that, but we certainly do understand with the coronavirus and the remote working and environment. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Ben muted me. I'd turn my microphone back on. Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Mr. Mason, or Dr.
Yeah.
Mason, sorry, and
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Personnel and consent agenda, Dr. Mike.
Okay, personnel. I'm recommending the motion that we accept the resignation of Catherine Schaefer. She was a title tutor for us. And then classified, recommend that we accept the resignation of Jane Vogel. She was an educational aide. And then the list that you have below, we are recalling some people that we reduced or laid off. 3 bus aides and 8 educational assistants. Also classified hires. I have to give a little shout out to Sherry, our bus coordinator, transportation coordinator. We needed 3 new bus drivers. Those are not easy to find. So we have 3 bus drivers that I would like you to hire. Of course, those are pending BCI and FBI checks. And then the classified substitute list for you to approve. Supplemental personnel. So Mark Knopik is resigning from his position, and then as football coach or one of the football coaches. And then 2 people will split his job, Josh Eshelman and Mike Galling.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for personnel?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
approved 5-0.
Are there any announcements?
Yes, a couple of board members have asked me to just talk a little bit about enrollment. Now, I have to preface this with, enrollment right now, it's hard to put a finger on because, we start later, so enrollments are still coming in. There are probably a few still going out. We're still counting students, all of those things. So it's really hard to say that these figures are 100% accurate. But if you looked at roughly the number of students that we had last February, which really would have been the last time we could have counted kids without the coronavirus, to the students that we know are enrolled today, we are about 150 students less than that. But again, remember, not all of the enrollments are counted. I know we have had some students leave. I know we've had some enrollments in. We are probably going to be down some students. But right now, as it stands, we have about roughly 2,150 students. And we had roughly in February, the grand total was roughly 2,309. So we are down a little bit, according to this.
Is this a common trend amongst districts?
I don't know. I need to ask some of our districts that have started already. And then what I always do, I mean, this is, if it does end up that we're 150 students less, then I find out where did they go?
Well, I've some of the private schools are having issues because a lot more parents are doing homeschooling.
It could be. We have had a few requests for homeschooling, but then again, we've received, I know, a few private school students because maybe their private school didn't have an option that they liked or whatever. So, and we haven't tabulated all of the exact open enrollment. So, I think we'll probably, when it's all said and done, we'll have lost some enrollment. And then, like I said, then we have to figure out why. I'll give you a couple of other figures, and then if you have more questions, that's more than fine. We have, if you look at the district, we're approaching about 25% that are choosing the online option. We thought it would be more like 22%. It's a bigger trend with elementary students, which we assumed would happen. But we are approaching about the 25% mark. We will have roughly, I believe, about, and Mrs. Sutton can correct me if I'm wrong, but roughly about 485 students on our digital program.
And that number is changing every day. We have both plus in and out. So some students are saying, yeah, my initial choice was DDA, but now I want to return. Some families are saying, nope, the more we, the latest health update or information that they get, they're deciding, yes, they want DDA. We will not make any hard and fast decisions. We will not we'll start our DDA students a little bit later than we will start our face-to-face students, just so we can actually count heads when students arrive through the door on September 8th. We're ready. We're ready for our students on September 8th. We want our students to be here. We want our teachers to be teaching our students, and we feel like that we can offer a safe environment for them following all the CDC and Stark Health guidelines.
I did forget to mention one thing. I think Mrs. Humphreys asked if this was a trend all the schools were seeing. Right at the moment, we are down with our kindergarten enrollment, and that is a trend that Stark County is seeing. The birth rate is lower right now. We are expecting that to go. There had been an upward trend in birth rates. And then, like everything else with the pandemic, I've heard experts say there will be a trend up, and I've heard experts say there will be a trend down. So we don't know, but we are losing. Most of Ohio, as you know, is losing population. And right now, the birth rates for us for Stark County are lower. So, and we always get everywhere, you get kindergarten students the first week of school. It's just the nature of the beast. So I wanted to add that about kindergarten.
Mrs. Sutton, could you clarify that you are still allowing students to change from face-to-face to remote learning and vice versa through this period of time, that they're not set with their original choice?
Yeah, we originally asked our families to make a decision by August 1st, so we could start to look at staffing and cost. And that current DDA number, it's changing every day. Students that are new enrolling, students are withdrawing, and then families that are changing their mind, and we're honoring those changes. We understand it's a very difficult time and families are having to make some difficult choices, and we're trying to be as flexible as we can.
Thank you.
I just got a question regarding costs and revenue. How does the online affect the district versus as far as expenses?
So our DDA curriculum, we purchase that by seat. So typically we would purchase we would purchase less than 100 seats per year because some of our students used those courses as singlets if they couldn't fit in an elective during their regular day, or we used credit recovery. Our new online digital curriculum, Acellus, is all encompassing. So we can use it for credit recovery and acceleration courses as well as singlets, but we do pay by the seat. So for every student that enrolls, we have to pay per student. We do anticipate that we will see an uptick in cost, which is why we are waiting until the last possible minute before we incur those costs.
So overall, it's costing the district more for the kids to be in the digital. Okay.
Yep. Bottom line, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion?
I have another announcement if we're finished with that topic. Just wanted to let everybody know that due to COVID, the Memorial Day parade in Marlboro Township was canceled. However, they are holding a parade on Saturday, September 5th at 1 p.m. It's going to start at Marlboro Manufacturing on Marlboro Avenue, and it ends at the Marlboro Cemetery. Let's see here. Like I said, that's Saturday, September 5th at 1 p.m. Anybody that wants to be in the parade, they have a lineup between 12 and 12:30 at Marlboro Manufacturing. So just want to let you know that. They're not going to have anybody walking or throwing candy. It's just going to be vehicle only parade.
Just a little addition to that, I talked with Mr. Hagan, and we'll see if we can get at least one bus and some representation. I think it's great to hear that things like this are starting up again. So let's see what we can do from the school's end.
Any additional announcements? The September regular board meetings are scheduled September 3rd and September 17th at 7:00 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Gabrick,
Yes?
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.